terrifically good to see you.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I enjoyed our little talk the other night when the president of Azad Kashmir was there.
I enjoyed it too.
And I'm looking forward to finding out. I think the volume's too high. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about Kashmir, and bear with my ignorance. But welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Farida Ghani, and she is a UN correspondent. Now she's a journalist, but she has roots in Kashmir.
That's
and
right.
has a personal linkage to that area that we're going to talk about because there are events. It's a very crucial part of the world, and she's had a personal involvement. Her family has had, and she's going to share that with us. And Farida, welcome very, very much to Conversation Manhattan Network.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I wonder if you could, I'd like to do this, and I appreciate it. Maybe you could, if you would, please, share your own background, where you were born and raised, and then you could help bring the audience up to understanding better the situation in Kashmir that you lived through a good deal of your life. But could you share your own background, please?
Yes, I was born in Srinagar, Kashmir. The name of the hospital was Renawari Hospital, which is in Srinagar. When I was a child, we were forced out of Srinagar. My father was a member of the Legislative Assembly of Kashmir. He was a barrister, having been educated in England, and he was affiliated with Lincoln's Inn in England, but he was a member of the Legislative Assembly. And this is around the time of partition, shortly after that.
48, 47, 48?
Well, on December 14th, 1948, Sheikh Abdullah arrested my father because my father was for the right of self-determination of the Kashmiri people. So my father was put in jail for 1 year and two months.
My Lord.
And I was a child at that time. And then my mother, who was an educated lady, she was an education officer there, but she was she was the first lady to get a bachelor's degree, then a B.Ed, and then she was educated for postgraduate work. She had done, she came to Ohio State University, which was a rarity in those days.
Good for her.
And then what happened is when my dad was in jail, the UN Commission for India and Pakistan, which was headed by Joseph Corbell, who is the father of Madeleine Corbell Albright, the former Secretary of State. He was the head of the commission.
Her father?
Yes,
Okay.
Joseph Corbell.
That's interesting. And his role, what?
He was the head of UNCIP, with the UN Commission for India and Pakistan. It was their resolutions. They came up with the UN resolutions calling for the right of self-determination of the Kashmiri people.
I wonder if we could. The Raj had held, the British Raj had been colonized and it had been treated as one area. And then there was the development after the British retreated in 1947 or so. There was the decision, Mr. Jinnah and so forth, to develop two countries, and the dislocation of people in that separation was truly wrenching, was it not? It was perhaps one of the most difficult wrenching dislocations of people in the history of mankind, perhaps. It might be worth underscoring that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a historical record of that, and we've seen pictures of people with bodies and, you know, the fighting which broke out, and then people having been forced to leave their homes. But in my case, what happened was, I was talking about Joseph Corbell, when my mother went to meet him and said, "Why did you arrest my father?" And she was one of the persons who would take on somebody like that, and they were going to investigate, and she wanted to bring to his attention the abuse of human rights in Kashmir, and she got arrested. So a 3-year-old child, I'll show you the house.
Yeah, we're going to show a film clip that you were able to go there after all these times, because you and the family, as I understand, had to leave and went to what is called Azad Kashmir. Yeah.
Yes, you see, what happened was they arrested my parents, and as a 3-year-old child, you can understand the trauma somebody goes through. The father's in jail and the mother's in jail, and then what are you supposed to do? But the trauma stays with you for the rest of your life, believe me.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Pretty off-putting, yeah.
Yes, but
at 3.
Yes,
you don't exactly know what to do when they take away your dad and your mother too.
Absolutely.
And a good deal of the people around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my grandmother took us to the other house, which is in the footage I saw, after all these years. And the thing is, after my father was released, Sheikh Abdullah involuntarily deported my father and my mother and children also. Now this was supposed to be exchanged. The UN had passed a resolution on the 5th of January 1949, and one of the clauses was that there's going to be exchange of prisoners of war. But there was an Indian prisoner of war called Ghansara Singh. He was the governor of Gilgit. India wanted those people to come, him to come to India. In return, they would send certain people to Pakistan. But we were local Kashmiris. We were not Pakistanis. We were put on a plane and we were sent to Azad Kashmir. Now, right before we were about to cross over, the Otto Wenger, he was the International Red Cross. He said, "My God, you're on the list, but you're Kashmiris. It's a mistake." Well, look, my job is just to see that you go to the other side. But my father said, "Why do we have to leave our own homes?" They said, "Well, you are being exchanged with prisoners of war." So we were involuntarily sent to the Azad Kashmir side. And then the idea was that we'd come back in a couple of weeks to our own homes. But you know,
decades later, you still hadn't been able to return. I wonder if we could maybe get a grounding, because a lot of the people won't realize there was that. And when there was a separation, you had two countries emerge out of it. You had Pakistan, you had Western Pakistan, Karachi and Lahore and so forth. You had Eastern Pakistan that was bound to become Bangladesh. And then there were three provinces, and the determination of how is it going to be decided whether the Muslim people who lived in great numbers, the Mughals had been there and so forth, and what was the Raj, and the Hindu people, which is the majority, how were the boundaries between these two countries, one being Pakistan, Muslim-oriented, the other Hindu, India-oriented, and there was a conflict on that, particularly over three provinces, if I understand. Most of it was well understood, the dividing line between the two, but there were three provinces that had difficulty, and Kashmir, the jewel in the crown in many people's head, was in dispute in a unique kind of way between the claims that India and Pakistan would have on that, on the people who lived there, and it was. Could you sort of? And then you had Azad Kashmir had been taken by Sardar Qayyum Khan, I believe, with his army, and they had set up a line of control. And maybe you could address that for the people who aren't familiar. And it's good to get an understanding, because that is perhaps the most difficult spot in the world in many people's mind. It's good that we can get a grounding on that. Then we can bring it back to your own personal situation, which illuminates that larger reality.
Okay, well, what had happened was there was a Maharaja at that time, Maharaja Hari Singh.
Hindu.
Yes. Dogra. What had happened was that you see, when many of the provinces had the princely states, they had opted either for India or Pakistan. But Mountbatten was come to see the departure of the former colonial British authority, and then make sure that the local people, you know, they chose, determined their future. Now, Hari Singh didn't make a decision by the 14th of August, or the 15th of August 1947.
This is the Maharaja?
Yes, the ruler. And so, in other words, at the time of partition, August 14th and August 15th, Kashmir had chosen neither India nor Pakistan at all. So what was the status? It was an independent princely state. But what happened was then the fighting broke out, you know, between Indian and Pakistani forces, and there was a whole amount of atrocities. You see,
it was a horrible, difficult time for a great millions of people were affected.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the point is that there was Ramchandra Kak, who was the Hindu prime minister. He wanted to be with Pakistan, but he was removed, and then there was another interim prime minister, and they had signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan. But you see, the thing is, then at one time in November, October and November, Mountbatten, Jinnah and Nehru had decided the only way to decide is to have a plebiscite. ask the people. This was in November, and this time when I went after all these years to Kashmir, I saw the place at Amira Kadal where Nehru had made that statement in front of the Punjab Muslim restaurant that I give you my word that we will ask the people. This is our pledge not only to the people of Kashmir but to the entire world. So I saw that location.
That was Nehru in the name of India.
Saying that we will ask, the future of Kashmir has to be decided by a plebiscite.
I believe he was Kashmiri.
Well,
Or he lived
in a manner of speaking, but he had lived for 200 years in Allahabad, you see.
Well, his family had.
His family had.
Yeah, yeah.
But he wasn't Kashmiri speaking like I was, you see.
Okay,
And he hadn't lived in Kashmir.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, he was arrested by the Maharaja of Kashmir in 1946 because he ventured into the Muzaffarabad Dumail bridge. He crossed over into Kashmir state without permission. So he said, you're not a Kashmiri, we are going to arrest you. They put him in jail, you see.
Kashmir is such a beautiful part of the world.
Yes.
And if I could back up again, you said your father had been in the Kashmir legislature.
Yes, yes.
Now,
yes.
was that was that a body that existed under the Raj and for the area? And what authority did it have? And then I think it's worth underscoring that in Kashmir there was an overwhelming majority of people of the Muslim faith.
Absolutely.
But the Maharaja was Hindu.
That is correct. That is
And
correct.
this led to, okay, yeah.
Well, the Maharaja was a Hindu, but the point is, if who is he signing over for? I mean, who does he speak for? You have to ask the people. But
That's
the
why I
UN
asked about the legislative body that your father had been part of.
The legislative body was you see, it was a princely state. You had a legislature. They passed laws and so forth. So they were he was elected. So he was a representative of the people of Kashmir, as opposed to a hereditary ruler like the Maharaja was. So my father was a protege of Jinnah. He was on Jinnah's side. So
Jinnah was the father of Pakistan.
Of Pakistan,
yeah,
yes.
Right.
But so he was automatically persona non grata by the people who by Nehru and his supporters. You see,
And that was India.
Yes.
That was India.
Yes, yes.
And they had ruled. Who had been the people 10 years before the Raj? Who had held sway in the Kashmir territory? Who were the authorities that were in real control of that area?
The British, actually.
The British,
yes,
okay,
yes.
all right. But as far as the India-Pakistan or the India-Muslim mix of the population there, you had a Maharaja, it was a princely state. Was it Hindu that were
Yes.
in control in geopolitical realpolitik
That's
terms?
right, that's right. Because he was the descendant of the Maharaja, and his father was the descendant of an earlier Maharaja.
And whereas there have been three, if I'm not mistaken, there were three provinces that there was some kind I don't know, was Hyderabad was one?
Hyderabad and Junagadh, yes.
Junagadh, and then there was Kashmir. Hyderabad and Junagadh somehow got settled?
Well, you see, the point is there's a discrepancy there. They had Muslim rulers, you see. It was in reverse to Kashmir, but they got absorbed into India. So many people have argued, but why don't you follow the same example as in Kashmir as you did for Junagadh and Hyderabad?
Yeah.
But the key thing is that the UN resolutions say that the right of self-determination of the Kashmiri people has to be without consideration of religion, race, color, or creed.
To be determined by a plebiscite of all the people,
yes.
whether they
Irrespective
wanted
of religion.
to have Kashmir, they're Kashmiris.
Yes.
And whether they wanted to have Kashmir be included in India or included in Pakistan. And was there an option then, and what does it stand in terms of the possibility of Kashmir emerging as an independent country independent from both India and Pakistan? I don't think that's probably geopolitically plausible, but that was what the plebiscite was to determine whether they were going to join with India or with Pakistan, and the plebiscite has never been allowed to be held, if I understand.
You're quite right, Harold. The plebiscite has never taken place, and it has never been permitted to take place. But if you look at the word self-determination and how it's codified by the United Nations, it includes several options. I mean, you can accede to a particular country, or you can become independent. The idea is, or have any other affiliation, as long as it's freely determined by the individuals of that particular entity in this particular thing, Kashmir. Now, that point has never come. That option has always been there. As a matter of fact, there's a resolution 1514 of 1961 by the Decolonization Committee that all former colonies have the right to self-determination, and among these are places like you see East Timor. That's how East Timor became independent, and Namibia became independent by means of that. Western Sahara is on that list, but Kashmir is not on the list, and that's a tragedy. And I think those people who support the right of self-determination of the Kashmiris should make a formal motion and put it on the list, so that sooner or later they will have the opportunity to give the people of Kashmir their own voice. The people of Kashmir should decide. I'll give you a case of New Caledonia. I mean, it is a former colony of France. France is far more powerful than India. But it's one of the big permanent members of the Security Council, the Big Five. But an island like New Caledonia is challenging France, and it's winning because it's on the list of the Decolonization Committee. But Kashmir, most regrettably, is not on the list. Now, the likelihood is that India is not going to do it. Kashmiris don't have a voice, but Pakistan should. I mean, if they do support, the people of Pakistan do support, at least verbally, the cause of Kashmir, but in a formal procedural manner, they should place it on the list so that sooner or later there will be a plebiscite.
Well, they've wanted, if I'm not mistaken, they've wanted to, and have said to all the world, there should be a plebiscite that, in their view, India, which should come in with force in the Srinagar in the valley, in this, had prevented under an occupying forces that, as I said to you, I saw a program with Solomon Rushdie. He's written a new book, Shalimar the Clown, and he said in the interview with Farid Zakaria that that's perhaps the most dangerous area in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of a possible major conflagration, and he said that they may have something on the order of 900,000 troops in Kashmir. The Indian forces do have, and they occupy it, and they have been very, very reluctant for their own reasons to allow there to be a plebiscite, even though, have they claimed that plebiscites have been held, but that they were not really? They just openly do not. And one wants to understand what the Indian position is.
It's been manipulated, you see. I mean, nobody has had. I mean, nobody asked me. I mean, I'm a Kashmir.
You're a Kashmiri.
Kashmir state subject. I have a vote. I haven't cast my vote for anybody. But without my vote, I mean, when I say I mean the individual Kashmiris. Everybody's entitled to.
And how unique is Kashmir? Is there a Kashmiri language?
Absolutely.
Like Bengali? And is it in keeping with the Vedic? Is it more like Urdu? Is it like Hindi? Is the culture unique?
Absolutely unique. It really is unique. It has quite a bit of Farsi words.
Farsi from Iran.
Yes. And it's unique, but a lot of people there understand Hindi and Urdu as well. But the local person, I mean, in my home, my aunt, etc., they only speak Kashmiri. They don't know any Urdu at all.
Really?
No.
They don't know Urdu?
No.
And you don't, if you know Kashmiri, you don't automatically understand Urdu?
Absolutely not.
Not even like Italian and Spanish?
No.
No, it's Farsi.
The point is, if you have studied Farsi, then you would know, if you've been to a university and so forth. The roots are similar, but the spoken language, Kashmiri is a unique language, you see, and the culture is different. And the Vazavan, it came from Central Asia, as the Mughal invaders came down.
Muslim.
Yes.
Built the Taj Mahal, among other things.
Yes, indeed.
Not a bad building.
One of the wonders of the world.
Yes, indeed.
But even the cuisine, for example, the Vazavan, it's a 21-course meal that came from Samarkand.
21 courses?
Yes. It's from Samarkand.
I hope they're small courses.
Small courses, but and the spices, you see, they're unique.
Not to mention Kashmiri tea.
Yes,
indeed. So good.
Yes, indeed.
And Kashmir, and again, Solomon Rushdie said that in the program. He said it's got to, and Farid agreed with him. He agreed. He said it's got to be one of the very most beautiful, magnificent places in terms of physical geography in the universe.
I agree with that, because, and I've just made
You came from there originally.
Yes,
Yes.
I came from there originally, but I made after, you know, this bus, the first bus from Muzaffarabad to Srinagar. When I heard about it, I took a trip to the first flight. I went from Muzaffarabad, I boarded the bus, and I went to
your old
Srinagar.
home.
To my
And your old home. And we're going to show a tape of that, but let's get back to some of the primer on this again. And let's weave it back into your personal life, because here you are, a young infant, your dad had been imprisoned by Indian forces who came in and seized control of it.
Absolutely, yes.
And then your mother also, and then you were made to flee. Oh, and there had been an invasion. Saddam Qayyum Khan, I believe, had made forces coming down from Pakistan, and there became what's called a line of control, and there was a section that is called Azad Kashmir, which is to the west or to the east of Pakistan, that was a line of control between Hindu and Muslim forces, and that was at the time of the partition. And that line of control is a point of contention in terms of that area, and that area is one of the most hotly contended and dangerous areas in the world now.
Right,
and one wonders why the Indians held so strongly to the need to keep their control over that. If I may?
What?
If I may, Solomon Rushdie said he thought that the thing primarily had been that India was afraid that if Kashmir broke away from the Indian Union, then so would go Assam, and so would go other places, and the Indian Union would break up, and that they had to keep control over that. But he did hasten to say that India's emerging as such a major power now that their paranoia, if that's the right term, about the breakup of the Indian Union following of Kashmir, were to be able to follow the course the UN had set out for it or something, maybe lessening because they're getting stronger in terms of their economy and so forth. So that's all part of the contemporary situation.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. But there's one thing, I believe Nehru had a personal fondness for Kashmir. It is a beautiful place.
Yeah, that's what I'm told. I've not been.
And apparently he wept like a woman, you see. That, I'm going to lose Kashmir. And he used underhanded means to control Kashmir, to keep it, under Indian control. And a lot of people realize that this is wrong. After all, Kashmir belongs to the Kashmiris.
It should.
And it should. Not to any other.
It's occupied.
It's occupied. And
900,000 troops.
Well, when I was there, I didn't count the number, but I did see uniformed people, everywhere.
Yeah.
And then one newspaper said, "What do you see different?" I said, "There's so many policemen and military officers." And the next day, the nowspaper said, "Oh, she says it's a," I'm pointing out that there are these police officers there. So, it's not, nowhere you go are you free from the presence of the Indian.
Okay, that's getting it sort of up to the present, and we got this clip film, where the clip of you on the bus at your home and everything. But let's take it back to when you were a 3-year-old or younger and you had to flee. You and your family had to flee, you thought temporarily, under the circumstances of your situation, to Azad Kashmir. And then you ended up being there for decades, or maybe picked up the stream of your personal story.
Nobody had envisaged that this entire thing would last forever. I mean, it was temporary. People don't get moved out of their homes, you see. And you see, for 7 centuries I've been Kashmiri. My great-great-great-grandfather was...
7 centuries?
Yes.
700 years?
Yes. My great-great-grandfather was the first Muslim emperor of Kashmir.
Wow.
His name was Rintu Shah. And my father's name is Abdul Ghani Rintu, meaning descendant of Rintu. And he became Muslim in the 1322.
1322.
And
that's going back some.
Yes, and he changed his name to Sultan Sadruddin. And but we are descendants, but our roots are completely Kashmiri. But to be dislocated, and one always wants to go back and to one's own home. The soil, the place where one grew up.
I thought I had some roots that went back a couple hundred years, but you're really
well in that part
back,
of the world. They remember. People have long memories.
Yes, right.
And. But it's been dislocating, because you see, it's like the family life becomes derailed. My father thought he would go back. Things didn't materialize in the same way in Pakistan. then you know, I was educated in Pakistan, and then I came to
Where?
In Lahore, in Murray, in Abbottabad.
What did you study?
Well, I studied journalism, and then when I was studying journalism in Lahore, Punjab University, I got a fellowship at Columbia Journalism School in New York, and then I came here, and after I got my degree from New York, I stayed. And
you did a master's there at
Yes.
Columbia? Oh, good for you. That's the place where the Pulitzer is. Mr. Pulitzer stands outside.
Indeed, yes. And then one thing led to another. I got married, and my husband passed away sometime. So, the thing is that one of the things what we had planned to do was my husband and I to go and live in Kashmir because he wanted to get a tan and you know in front of the beautiful houseboats, you see.
Oh yeah, at Lake Dal. Huh?
Yes, Lake Dal.
Yeah.
And
you can get a tan in Miami, but it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. I want to go back to my roots.
Yes, I understand, yeah.
But he's no more.
And it's been very frustrating.
Very
And it's the major bone of contention between Pakistan and India.
Well, you see, the line of control is purely artificial. A brother needs to see his brother. You see, right after we came on the Pakistani side to Azad Kashmir, my grandfather, my mother's father, he died. But my mother was not permitted to go to see to his funeral. Now, we should be allowed to do it. It is only about 111 miles. It wasn't all that big a difference.
No.
And then when my father's mother died on the Indian side, he was not allowed to go to her funeral. Then when my father died on the Pakistani side, his brother was not allowed to come to his funeral. And then when he died, you know, we were not permitted to go to his funeral. You know, this creates... So what is the, you know, it's Kashmiri families divided artificially by this line of control. And who's
That's
divided?
very wrenching, yeah. When
Yes,
that
but you
happens,
see, the irony of it is that there's a UN military observer group. The UN this year, the budget is $8.71 million dollars. They're public monies, and they want to make sure that nobody crosses over from the Pakistani side to the Indian side and vice versa. And inadvertently, I mean, this role was never envisaged to divide Pakistani to Kashmiri families, but that's in reality what it was, a temporary measure until there was a plebiscite.
Yeah, and the plebiscite has never been allowed.
50 odd years.
That was under a UN resolution.
Yes.
The idea that there would be a plebiscite. Why do we not hear, if we do, or should we hear in the UN halls of the UN charges that they have there been resolutions saying there should be, that's a resolution, there should be a plebiscite, and has there been no pressure put on them to have a plebiscite, and is that not a violation of UN resolutions on the part of the Indian government?
Absolutely. Your resolutions are binding.
A number of resolutions.
A number of resolutions. This is 48, 49, but up to 57. There are a whole bunch of resolutions.
And they just ignore that with geopolitical power.
Power, and nobody wants to take on a powerful country, and that's
like India.
Well, but that's a shame. I gave the analogy of France. France is stronger than India. If an island like New Caledonia can challenge it and is winning, then aren't the people of Kashmir entitled to the same?
What's the main reason, do you think? Let's look at it. You got some photographs, and we want to show the clip and so forth. What's the main reason that India has been so obdurate in terms of this issue, do you think? Mr. Solomon Rushdie said he thought it was because there was fear that if that were to happen, the Indian Union would fall apart. Assam would go in other places. What is the main reason, do you think, that you have this thing that they violated these UN accords, and there's been a great loss of life, tremendous human rights violations, it's an occupied area, it's a scene of great violation of human rights. What's been the major reason that India has been so obdurate in your view, looking at it from their standpoint?
Well, I think it's a matter of prestige, and if they think that they can get away with it, and because it is beautiful, they just want to hold on to it, you see. And I mean, they fought wars over this, and all the money they've spent, you see. And yet, India would be the first one to say that, you know, they'd go for civil liberties and so forth, but they're denying the right of self-determination to the Kashmiri people, and that's not right, really.
No particular understanding other than it's a land grab.
Well, it's just a land grab that particular theory that the rest of India will disintegrate, you know, Assam will. Well, people have thought about this, but you see, that's really not the problem of the Kashmiri people. I mean, you see, one.
How many of them are there, Kashmiris?
14 million.
14,
yes.
Sizable.
Yes,
not
you know,
huge, but sizable.
Yes,
no.
I mean larger than many independent UN countries.
Absolutely, yeah.
But one of the things which we thought was that, you see, when the British came to South Asia, all of these were there were about
Princely
500
states.
Princely states,
Right. A lot of
semi-autonomous, yes,
Yeah.
lots of languages. But when the British came, they tried to rule it as one country, just like. But in reality, they were all, you know, different. So this control in itself may be artificial. You see. Now, when the British left, the legacy was that it would be one country. But in reality, there are all these different, you know, like Europe. You see,
Oh, yeah.
there are different countries, but it's easy to pass by.
So that's what I'm saying. The ties of union are tenuous in the minds of the Indian, because they got so many different
languages,
cultures, and so forth.
And perhaps it's an artificial state to begin with, you know, in this form, you see. Perhaps there should be different. I mean, this is one line of people think of that.
The Congress Party, and they're trying to assume a national identity of all the people. And we fought a civil war about we wouldn't allow Virginia or other countries, states to secede from our union.
Yes.
And that kind of idea.
Well, that's different. But you see, Kashmiris have never been given the choice to determine their own future. Manmohan Singh says a couple of things. He says there will be no change of boundaries. Now, India's boundary on 15th August 1947 excluded Kashmir. What I'm saying, there should be no change of that boundary, because Kashmir was never part of the Indian sovereign state. When you're talking about the boundary, you know, the ceasefire line should be abolished so that a brother can see his brother.
The ceasefire, the line of control?
The line of control.
That's where
really
the bus, we're going to show a film clip of crossed recently.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And also Manmohan Singh is also saying that, well, there will be no solution on the basis of religion. So to me, the answer to that is that the UN resolution said the people will decide their future without consideration to religion, caste, color, or creed.
Yeah, just an open plebiscite.
That's the best.
Which has been denied. Will the Indians say there have been plebiscites and there have been elections done, and the people decide they want to be with India? Do they try to make that claim?
That's only half the people, you see. That's an election in the Indian control. That's not the plebiscite, you see. It's manipulation of language.
But they do make that claim?
They have made it, yes. And but then the question is when. But I have a videotape which.
Now, do you have some photographs here that maybe can help illustrate some things you've been talking about?
Yes. Well.
Now you got a collage here, right?
This is a collage.
Can I try and hold this up? What's it? You're covering something there. Oh, this is a photograph. And
this is my father.
That's your father, who was in the legislature.
Yes, Abdul Ghani Rinto. This is my mother, Birjis Ghani. Now. This is Joseph Corbell, Madeline Corbell Albright's father. Now, when he was put in jail, she went to meet him.
And he was, at that time, again?
Head of the UN Commission for India and Pakistan.
He was a diplomat, yeah.
And he was, they decided, he formulated the UN resolutions.
He did?
Yes, yes. He was head of the commission at that time.
Madeline Albright goes back in those circles.
Yes.
And who's the other gentleman, or does it matter?
He's another member of the commission. There are several members.
When would those photographs of your parents been done, and when were the photographs of Mr. Colbert?
This is in the 40s.
In the 40s?
Yes.
This is in the formative time of the current context.
That's right.
Okay, and that's an interesting collage photograph. Thank you. And then you got something else we could show?
This is my mother has written a detailed account.
Okay, now let me hold these up. These are small.
I don't know if you can see them.
Should we do them the way these are then?
As you wish, yes.
Okay.
This is a picture.
Maybe you can see, and maybe you can point to. I have to hold it up close. So.
This is Srinagar. You can see the hills over there in the background, and it's a beautiful place, as you can see.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
And I'll show you another one.
And then here's another one
of the Dal Lake. And this is, I'm in a shikara. I took this picture.
What's a shikara?
A shikara is a boat.
Oh, a boat, like
yes,
a gondola.
Yes, like a
like in Venice.
Yes,
they have beautiful lake and the mountains, mighty mountains.
And the mighty mountains.
It's good. They have almonds and they have pistachios, I think, and they have. It's
even in our own garden, you see, they had. And this is another view of the Dull Lake and the mountains framing the Dull Lake.
I'm afraid I don't know how well people can see it, but it is. I'm told, and Mr. Solomon Rushdie agrees, that it's the most beautiful area, one of the most beautiful areas in the world.
And this is a houseboat,
physically.
It's a houseboat on the Dull Lake.
Dull Lake, the traditional houseboats that they have. I think we have one more. Let's see if...
And this
you want me to show this more?
No.
Okay.
That's it.
And this is?
This is one of the Mughal gardens, you see.
The Mughal gardens.
Yes, and these are magnificent. Shalimar, Nishat, and...
these are photographs that you have with you over the decades?
Yes.
Including you have one of yourself when you were 3 years old, but it's so small. Maybe we can get it. I don't know if we can.
Well, no, it's but
it's so too small. It's just a little one. We're a little tight, 3 years old or something, when all this trauma was going on around you.
But the memories stay. I remember the house. I remember where I used to play, where my little puppy was buried. You see. Where my pink sweater was. I thought I'd come back.
Yeah. And, I know. I can remember that kind of thing myself in my own life's experience. So I understand that. Now the thing is, there's been this trauma over the decades. It's been it's been an area of tremendous conflict, and one that's very unsettling to the world. Both countries now have atomic capability in terms of weaponry. The weapons have been brought out. The sabers rattle. It's a very, very deep concern to the world. And this line of control that had been formed of Assad Kashmir to the west and the north has become a line where there cannot be a crossing, and it's occupied by, again, 900,000 troops in Srinagar. And then recently, there was, I guess there's sometimes melting, or it flares up as an issue. All the world gets very upset, and then it calms down, and there was a period of calm or something to where there was a bus that crossed in a historic kind of way more recently. If maybe you could share the background of that.
Well, I heard that there was going to be a bus as part of this peace process between Pakistan.
And you've been following this issue all along?
Yes.
Living
my
here in New
life.
York.
Yes, in New York, but I follow this, you see.
Yes, of course.
And so what I did was, as soon as I knew that they were taking applications for it, I took the first...
Wait a minute. Could you build the context? How did it happen that what was the context out of which this was to emerge? Was there a thaw in relations, or what was it?
Yes. India and Pakistan, President Musharraf said, well, let's talk about it. And the United States has encouraged both India and Pakistan to resolve this issue. And because I would imagine...
I think all the world prays they could, because it's very, very dangerous.
Very, very.
I'm not, which is more dangerous, there or Palestine? I'm not sure.
Well,
we know more about Palestine.
That's right.
But we don't get much reporting on this maybe equally dangerous flashpoint in the world, and we should all understand it. Yeah.
Because of the atomic nuclear weapons, if not more, because this time nobody's going to survive.
And the feelings run very deep.
Very, very deep indeed, yes.
Okay.
And the thing is, so I went and I took the first bus.
But what was causing, was there a thaw that allowed there to be considered a crossing, officially recognized crossing of this line of control recently?
Yes, what they're calling it a confidence building measure. Let the poor Kashmiris, downtrodden Kashmiris, see their loved ones after more than half a century.
A gesture of goodwill.
A gesture of goodwill.
On the part of the Indian forces.
And they worked out together between India and Pakistan that we are going to a semi-monthly bus service with 30 passengers.
Could I ask, what had prevented you from being able to go back to visit your home over all those decades?
You can't.
I know, but who is the India forces prevent Kashmiris to come even on a visit? Even on a visit. I've also been told that they discouraged and would not allow human rights organizations, Amnesty International, because there have been something on thousands, tens of thousands that have died. Absolutely true. And curfews, lockdowns, rapes, very bad things. But they wouldn't, and they won't allow press, international press, to go there. They did not.
You're absolutely right.
And this was all done at the behest of the Indian forces that made it so you could not go and visit or anything. but there was a thaw in this recently.
Yes, a little thaw, but even so, you see, after 7:30, everybody was afraid to go out of their houses.
Yeah, it got that bad. Yeah.
And there were policemen everywhere, whether you go to the hills, to the Dull Lake. You know, it's very, very uncomfortable, you see.
Yeah, sure.
And the place, it's a dead city. And then even if you have to go to see relatives, they need a permit from somebody to travel after dark. Well, that's not, well, that's a police state in my opinion, you see.
It's occupied.
So no, even in spite of the thaw, it's the tension is very much there, especially if you have so many troops roaming around. But
police and troops.
Yes, troops.
Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing. You
Yes,
know, a
please.
couple of things are missed opportunities, in my opinion, on the basis of on the part of Pakistan. I have a clip of Rajiv Gandhi saying in front of Sonia Gandhi and Natwar Singh, who is the foreign minister, that India has always agreed to the UN plebiscite. If this is if he has said it in front of TV cameras at the UN in response to my question, the next step is, what are the next steps?
He was
Let's
responding to your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
And then I.K. Gujral says in '98 here in New York, I'm willing to have a UN plebiscite even now. I brought you that videotape which has those clips.
Yeah.
People can see this, you know.
Yeah.
And but the point is, people should have Pakistan should have seized the momentum and said, okay, what is the first step? First step is, you know, there is a ceasefire. Next thing is withdrawal of troops, but the troops are still there.
Well, haven't they been asking that for a long time?
Yes, indeed.
And
but
it's
I mean,
ignored.
that's true, but in a formal motion.
Yes,
a formal motion. There should be, so that this thing materializes, the plebiscite materializes. But I still have that on tape.
But they do not want a plebiscite.
Well,
because if they did, and there was a true plebiscite, and as I saw, it was something 85–90% of the population was Muslim, the chances are it's going to go against the Hindu interest.
Well, that's
or
they're afraid of losing.
Yes, right.
They are afraid of losing.
That's usually the reason people don't want to have a
what
plebiscite.
Are they afraid
if they
of?
think they're going to win, if it's a shoo-in, they're going to be all for it.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
And what are they afraid of? But if you have said it on tape, and the Secretary General, you know, this Boutros Ghali, Javier Perez de Cuellar, I also have a tape saying, nobody has asked me. You see, they're passing the buck.
Yeah.
If somebody had made a formal motion, but you see, in Kosovo, for example, the UN intervened on its own, you see.
Yeah.
So they're depending, they want to...
Against human rights violations that could not be ignored.
Yes.
Same could be made in case of Kashmir. They're really huge human rights violations
including plebiscites, you see, including the right of self-determination.
So anyway, there was, if I'm not mistaken, one of the problems is it's a huge question. I really appreciate your knowledgeable sharing with us that. But one of the problems is you don't have enough time. We could talk for hours on this. It's an issue that's roiled that part of the world for a long time. But we brought it up now to the relatively recent experience where there was apparently a thaw and there was going to be allowed a bus to cross this bridge that separates the two, the Assad Kashmir from, you know, from Indian occupied or Indian Kashmir, as they would have it, I suppose. And you have some footage, and you went from here, got it, and you heard that this was happening. Maybe you could set it up, and then we got about a 6, 7, 8 minute piece that we're going to run of you as part of the crossing ceremoniously this bridge that we're going to talk over because it's in Urdu and so forth. We're going to talk over and also showing your home, but maybe you could, in a sense, set us up for that, and then we can play that piece of tape.
Okay. So when are you going to start?
No, just set it up for us. What was the context? You heard that. When was it, and what are we looking at? We're looking at a piece of footage of the bus going from Azad Kashmir to Srinagar.
Yes, well, from Azad Kashmir to Srinagar, and I took the first flight and got applied for the bus, and they said, but I did say I've come all the way from New York, you know, can you try to accommodate me? They said, all right, they were sympathetic. And I did go on the first bus, and it was from Chakoti, from Muzaffarabad, Gari Dupatta.
Muzaffarabad is the capital of Azad Kashmir.
Azad Kashmir, yes. Yeah. And from there, the bus started. I mean, there was President Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan. Well, he's no longer president, but he's the former president. You know, Prime Minister Sikandar Hayat, he invited us to dinner, and we were welcomed. And they saw us, they bade us farewell on that bus. And
were you concerned for your physical safety or anything?
Well,
because
that
emotions run so high.
That very day, there was a threat saying that this bus is going to be a coffin on wheels, and I'm in the bus.
Yeah, that would put your
Some
mind
people,
not exactly at ease. Yeah.
Some people backed out, but
because the emotions run so high.
Yes,
right?
indeed. But you see, there's so much publicity because of this event that had come from BBC and God knows what, all the international media.
Yeah.
But they asked me, how do you feel that your lives have been threatened and you're still on the bus?
Yeah.
I said, I've been prevented. It's my right to be in my own home. But after half a century, I'm going there.
Yeah.
But if those people who have made the threat should rethink it. I mean, what are they trying to accomplish?
Okay. Well, and we better run it because we're going to run out of time. We're talking with Farida, and we got this tape, and we're going to just keep the mics on, and you'll talk over it, and it's you'll explain what's going on with the footage. So maybe we could run that footage now, then, please. There we go. So this is the bus.
Yes, this is the bus.
Muzaffarabad, Srinagar. No.
Muzaffarabad Srinagar bus service. It's a big modern bus with a VCR and DVD and so forth.
They're setting up a service?
Well, it's...
is this a one-time thing, or were they going to... Is it set up
semi-monthly.
Semi-monthly now?
Yes.
And this was the first?
This is the very first, yes.
And this was when?
This was on the 7th of April.
7th of April of the year?
2005.
This very year.
And this is
so these are people on the Pakistani, Azad Pakistan side?
On Chakoti, the place where I am, is I'm in the front row, but sometimes you can't see me. But I'm wearing...
There's a lady in the wheelchair in the front.
Yes, she's in front. But right now I'm on the Pakistani side, where I've lived for all these centuries, decades rather.
Yeah.
Now this is the bridge. This used to be called Lal Pul. But now it's meaning red bridge, but it's white, it's painted white, you see, and they should rename it as Chitta Kadal, which is one word, Kadal means bridge in Kashmiri, and Chitta means white.
And the white bridge is in Urdu?
White in Urdu, in Punjabi, Pahari, Hindko, the languages of the Pakistani side.
It's complicated, all those languages.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you're going to walk across with great ceremony and you're going to wave goodbye to the people in Pakistan?
Yes.
Is that what you're doing?
I'm waving goodbye to the people and there's a good sign over there. They said no religion teaches animosity towards other religions. That's on the Pakistani side. But the bridge was screeching, you see, and before we came to, there was another bridge.
That was a proud moment or a happy moment?
It was a happy moment, but nobody had traveled on that bridge in half a century. You see.
Oh, I see you in the green scarf a couple rows back.
Yes,
right, that's you, I see.
Yes.
And were you apprehensive about possible...
oh, absolutely.
You were nervous?
Some people backed off from the bus, you see, and now
You're greeting people on the India side?
Yes, and the person in the turban, he's related to me. He's on the Indian side.
Really?
But I didn't know that at that time because I've never seen him in half a century, you see.
I'll be darned.
Taj Mahyuddin, you see. And his mother and my mother are first cousins. Or this person is the chief minister of one with white hair of Mufti Muhammad Saeed of the Indian occupied Kashmir. There's me and my brother on the Pakistan
I see, with
side.
the green scarf, that's you, and flowers.
And he's put garland on my...
They got a lot of flowers in Kashmir.
Yes, the garlanding all these people.
Oh, I see,
So now we're on the Pakistani side, you see. And but it's a very emotional moment.
No, you're on the Indian side.
I'm on the, yes, I'm sorry, on the Indian side
occupied
now.
Kashmir. Do you call it Indian occupied? They call it Indian occupied?
But they call it POK, which I'd never heard of this.
POK, what is that?
Park occupied Kashmir on the other side. We call it, all my life I've known it as Azad Kashmir. And they're giving us, sweets, in celebration.
Right.
After half a century, you've been able to come to the place you were born.
How far are you there from Srinagar?
This is, the total is 111 miles. We came about 33 miles, so it would be about 80 miles.
Where's the bus?
We've already got off from the bus.
But what bus is going to take you to Srinagar?
A next bus.
A next bus. The bus can't go over the bridge.
No.
It wouldn't support that. I see.
It wouldn't support.
So you had a bus from what is that town? The capital of Azad?
Muzaffarabad to Chakoti.
How far is that?
That's about 33 miles.
I see, okay.
And this is the point, you see. This, now on this side is the Indian side.
Uh-huh.
And okay, and now I come...
Now this is you coming to the home that you have been raised in and had to leave at the age of 3.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So this must have been a poignant moment. Please talk to us.
And here I come, and that picture, I was 3 years old at that time. This used to be a magnificent house at that time, but it's in shambles now.
Now you're casting back when you were 3 years old.
Exactly, but I remember it vividly. And you see, and here I'm talking to some people that I've come here after so long, and getting the surrounding areas, and I'm saying, well, here's a cherry tree, and there was an almond tree, and there was a white cherry tree.
Where you buried your dog?
Yes, a place where I buried my dog. And we had hoped that we'd come back and give it a proper burial. That's what children think about,
yes.
You see. And you see, it's in such bad shape.
And you had to leave this house when you were 3?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
And then come back after, you know,
yes.
more than
it's
half a century.
It's very poignant. It must have been very emotional.
But there's a lock there, and it's become... but the property is still in my father's name.
It is?
Yes, yes.
And recognized by
and recognized. And we checked with the custodian records. My father passed away. You see, if you take a picture of this, a glimpse of it used to be nice.
You can see it when it's all dialed up, yeah.
But you know, it's because if you give it to other people and it's become a school, and they've, you know, haven't kept it up properly, and it's in bad shape. But it was a very emotional moment.
It must have been.
And
it's a beautiful climate there?
Oh, it was lovely. And the water of the Dull used to come up to the property.
Lake,
yes,
the major
yes.
lake, yeah.
And at that time, they didn't have a whole bunch of other buildings, as Maggie had said.
Yeah.
They came up afterwards, you see.
Yeah.
But the Dull water used to come all the way to the property. And we
Did you really? Yeah.
And we used to have little, ducks. And floating in there. It was sort of an inlet of the Dull Lake, you see. But what I say is, you know, somebody had just given me this book on my way. That please take this as a present. Every man, woman, and child is consumed by the Kashmir problem.
Yes, in both of those countries and in that part of the world. And we should be more aware of it here in the United States and in the broader world community. Yeah.
And you see, you wouldn't believe it. Wall to wall people from Muzaffarabad all the way to Srinagar. They thought there was going to be some opening, some solution.
From this bus thing?
Yes, they thought that maybe this is the first sign, you see. But the people think Azadi, meaning, you know, we want our right of self-determination, you see. The people from treetops, from rooftops, you see.
And
wall
this
to
is you
wall
leaving.
people.
This is you just leaving a very poignant and nostalgic visit to the home you had to leave at 3 years old.
But you know, and it's got rent.
Well, that must be nostalgic for you to have been there. It must have been quite a trip. And we had more footage. We can't get it all in.
No.
Doll Lake and everything. It must have been reminiscent.
Yes, yes.
And how many were on that trip?
30 people.
30.
You only